Good morning, everyone, in beautiful sunny Seattle, not quite, but in beautiful wintry Seattle, at least. My name is Claude Baudoin. I'm going to be the MC of this meeting for at least most of the time. I apologize already to one of the speakers because the OMG week of meetings is such a complicated scheduling affair that very often there's a need for some of us to float back and forth between meetings, and that's exactly what's happening to me this morning. So at one point I will disappear and then I will reappear, and don't take that as a slight on my part. This is just because I'm double booked having to present on our cloud working group efforts at one of the other task forces in the middle of the morning. I'm an IT consultant by trade, based near San Francisco, and I have been working with the OMG for on and off for most of the OMG's 29 years of existence. So that's what I bring to the party, I guess. I am co-chair of the Business Modeling and Integration Task Force with Fred Cummins, who's here. I am co-chair of the Cloud Working Group and of the Data Governance Working Group. And I also assist the Academic Working Group. So that's why I'm so busy during these weeks. A few logistics points. We will have a break from 10:15 to 10:30. And the break supplies, coffee and whatnot, will be in the foyer just outside of this hallway. And this is also the area where various vendors of tools based on OMG standards have their booths, which means that it gives you a chance to visit them and see what they do. What am I forgetting?
I think they may be not there.
They may not be there anymore. They probably still have their literature and stuff like that. And we can fill that gap for you if you have any information. I didn't know when they were wrapping up their display. On the back table are a few important things. The most important one for us is a sign-up sheet. If you have not signed the sign-up sheet, please do so at some point. Definitely, we want to be able to follow up with you, and we want to be able to report back on how many people attended this session. There's also some literature on the back table, including a couple of desk copies of manuals, which are in particular two of the volumes of the Industrial Internet Consortium Book of Knowledge. One is the document on the communication framework, and one is on the security framework. So the Industrial Internet Consortium, which is an OMG program, publishes a number of volumes of what will eventually be a compilation of knowledge on the industrial Internet of Things. What we do at OMG at every meeting, basically, and we've done that for 2 or 3 years, and these are quarterly meetings, is that we have a day or a half day on a specific focus to explain how OMG standards apply to a particular domain. So we've had that for manufacturing, we've done it for oil and gas at one point, we may have done it before on electrical production and distribution, etc. We're doing it again on energy, this time in Seattle, and because this is not exactly the hotbed of the oil industry, our energy focus this time is more on other sources of energy than fossil fuels, and so it includes renewables, nuclear, and the general aspects of distribution, including, of course, grids and microgrids, as you see in the program. So we will have 3 presentations, 1 before the break and 2 after the break, and finish by a 30-minute moderated Q&A that I will handle. If we can liberate you earlier, we will. We're not quite sure about that. Those of you who are part of an OMG member company, you're allowed and invited to join us at lunch because this was a free event for non-members, your lunch is not included in your registration unless you are an OMG member. So bear that in mind. I'm not sure everyone would forcibly remove you from a table, but we actually have, you have not paid for lunch. And there is a very nice restaurant on the second floor of this hotel. Very nice and very expensive. But I'll leave that to your to your own wisdom. Another thing that I need to mention is we are recording audio and video, and we will put clips for each session on YouTube with a private link that will be sent to you, so you will be able to see yourself if you're a speaker, or and cringe at how you spoke, or you will be able to review the presentations later. It is therefore absolutely important, if you're asking a question at some point, that you either wait until someone hands you a microphone, or if you ask a very quick question from the room, the speaker must repeat the question. We're going to have to be fairly exacting about this issue in order for the questions to be captured. Did I forget anything? Meg keeps me honest. So Meg Duncan here from the OMG staff has been putting everything together with the help of the speakers, and she always does a fantastic job, and then she panics at the last moment because if she's not sure everyone is in the room. But that's, it always works. Thank you, Meg. All right, so I'm going to provide a bit of an introduction to the Object Management Group and the Industrial Internet Consortium, and what they do and how we participate in generating a number of standards, actually a whole family of standards that are relevant to the domain of Industrial Internet of Things, and in particular to IIoT in energy. And these are sort of our stock slides, if you want, slightly modified for the purpose of this event. So OMG was founded in 1989, so it's approaching slowly its 30-year anniversary. And originally it was largely focused on what we might call middleware now, but the original topic, or the focus of the first few years, was related to object request brokers. And in particular, a standard called CORBA, which means Common Object Request Broker Architecture. And there are many implementations of CORBA that are still extremely important today. In fact, a lot of that technology has migrated today into mobile devices. Almost every smartphone out there, at least I think all the Android ones, have in fact the core of an object request broker inside as the middleware or the messaging bus that carries invocations between applications and operating system services. So when people said, oh, CORBA, that's old stuff, it's dead, that's nothing could be less true. It is an organization, it's OMG.org, so it's actually a non-profit organization, but it counts as a standards development organization, an SDO, and it collaborates with other SDOs very actively. In the course of those 29 years, there's more than 225 different specifications, as they're called, formally, but they are in fact standards that have been developed, some of which are extremely well known, some of which are very obscure to the general public, even to the general technical public. We have about 330 member organizations, and they range from one-person or two-person consulting companies to universities, to government entities, and then commercial companies of various sizes up to some of the largest ones. So some of the members would be companies like IBM, Microsoft, and large industrial companies like Bosch and so on. And we collaborate very much, or we have multiple liaisons with various parts of ISO, and as a result, there are now 11 specifications that originated at OMG that have become ISO specifications. It's important to know that because some of those specifications are actually available from both organizations. If you take BPMN, for example, the Business Process Modeling Notation, it is an ISO standard. Don't ask me to give you the 5-digit ISO number for it because, as you know, it's not alphabet soup, it's digit soup at ISO. And so you can go to the ISO website, you can search for BPMN, and you can download that specification, and you have to pay, I don't remember if it's still 150 Swiss francs, or because they're based in Geneva, or more. Or you can go to the OMG website, and you can search for the BPMN specification, and you can download it for free. And the only difference between the two PDFs you would get is a cover page. The rest is bit for bit, or pixel for pixel identical, because essentially what ISO did was take a PDF supplied to them by OMG, replace the cover page, and the specification is the same. So if you don't have enough Swiss francs in your pocket, go to the OMG website to see if it's available. All our specifications are available for free to anyone. Now, in the course of, when OMG started, it was mostly focused on, as I said, communication technology, request broker, etc. But we started around 95 or 97, so relatively early in the course of OMG's history, to expand and focus a little bit more on vertical markets. So we started looking at how do the standards apply to various domains. And so as a result, we have very active work going on in multiple task forces, which we call domain task forces, and they include areas like finance, government, healthcare, manufacturing, the C4I community, which is the military, retail, which is a more recent focus, robotics, space, and several more. There's a new one called workplace benefits, for instance, for non-health related insurance in companies, and you have issues of standardization of data models and etc. And this is the list that we always show associated with a disclaimer that it is not a complete list, and that if the companies that are omitted from this list are not less important than the ones that are listed, but we just fit a certain number of them on there. And so it goes, as I said, from extremely large organization. You have MITRE, NASA, Microsoft, and then you have much smaller organizations on here. And some of them here are definitely suppliers of solutions to things like the energy industry, people who provide either hardware systems, software systems, communication protocols, etc. And we'll talk a little bit more about some of those standards, and some of the people who are listed on this slide are going to be presenting today. So the best known standards, the ones that actually some people might be recognizing, are of course UML, which dates back to around 1995, which was the big merger of all the competing object-oriented analysis and design methodologies, and is the standard with the largest recognition in the software industry today as a means to model software and generate some of the code automatically. And a derivative, if you want, of UML, which is SysML, the system modeling language, which is used obviously to specify, analyze, and verify, because there's a risk analysis and a requirements analysis part in SysML, complex systems and systems of systems. And SysML is on version 1 point, I don't remember what, but there is a task force that is actively now developing a SysML version 2, which incorporates concepts like digital twin, that is probably going to be very interesting for large assets like power plants. BPMN, Business Process Modeling and Notation, has now become the recognized standards on how to document, analyze, and teach, and improve, and perhaps automate business processes. CORBA at the bottom left, I've already mentioned. DDS, bottom center, the data distribution service. You're going to hear about it later in the course of the IIC microgrid presentation by Dr. Pardo. And then the meta object facility is basically a standard for a repository of objects and a facility that enables those objects to actually be accessed by multiple tools and interchange. So in addition to what OMG does directly, which was what I just presented, there's a couple of programs that are under the aegis or under the supervision of OMG but have their own brand. And people may not realize that they're part of the OMG family. So one is the Industrial Internet Consortium, which was founded almost 5 years ago by 5 companies, most of which are still extremely active, and then there's been a little bit of reshuffling in terms of the biggest sponsor companies, but here you have AT&T, Cisco, GE, IBM, and Intel. And the purpose of the Industrial Internet Consortium is not to create standards, it is to promote the growth of, or accelerate the adoption of IoT techniques in industry. So therefore the IIC works on things like architectures, interoperability, security, communication, and they have published a number of really important documents, including a reference architecture, a communication framework, a security framework, a framework for endpoint security that may be, again, something very important in the architecture of an electricity or a power network, especially at for instance, the touch points between multiple grids, etc. Or, you know, up in the air on the near the turbine of a wind turbine. So one of the things that the IIC does very well, I mean, it does many things very well, but one of the things that are the most exciting is that basically it provides a place where people can come together and test some of the technologies, and the great results of that are called test beds. There's about, I can't remember what the number of test beds is. It was 25 or something like that at one point. It's somewhere in that order of magnitude. And these are basically concrete demonstrations of a bunch of hardware and software connected using the protocols and the architectures that have been defined by the IIC, and allow multiple vendors together to collaborate in a pre-competitive space. We have very strong intellectual property protection rules within the IIC. And the IIC also meets 4 times a year in various cities around the world. And we have an energy task group, I'm part of it too, and it is supposed to cover all forms of energy, but the current focus is on electric power, in part because the oil and gas industry, if you watch the price of oil, you might understand why they are not too keen to spend money right now. Anyway, the other program, and so some of the documents at the back of the room are IIC documents, not OMG documents, but we work together. The other thing I should mention is when the IIC detects through their work that a standard might be needed, what they do then is they go to whatever standards defining organization is the appropriate recipient of that request, and they ask they report back to that organization through their work, they've identified the need for a standard, and they ask OMG or others as appropriate, but often OMG, to actually work on that standard. And two concrete examples is that when it comes to communication between elements of an IoT network, there are multiple competing protocols like MQTT, the OPC Foundation's OPC UA, and OMG's data distribution service. And the IIC came to OMG and said it would really be nice to have a standard way to develop, to operate a gateway between devices that speak OPC UA and devices that speak DDS. And OMG has generated that standard based on that request. And right now there's another standard that has been solicited called Sensor, which is, it's SENSR, but the initials mean something, except I forgot what it means. But it's again about sensor communication, and there is a request for proposals right now for a specification to ensure the collection of data from sensors. Oh, sorry, I'm going in the wrong direction. The other managed program, or program managed by OMG, is CISQ, the Consortium for IT Software Quality, and it's an organization that is focused on software metrics. So it has developed some standard to measure certain properties of source code in order to understand its complexity, its security, its reliability, or its performance, or its maintainability. And as a result, this particular consortium, which has a different set of members with OMG overlap, but a lot of people, of course, from the system integrator and software industry, and they've developed a number of standards that supplement the ISO 25000 series, and there's now 7 different standards that have been developed and that have been approved and made into standards by OMG. So again, CISC doesn't create standards by themselves. They do all the legwork to define the metrics, and then they pass that on to OMG, which makes that into a standard. So we basically are here to empower the utility and electricity and energy industry in general with the use of OMG standards. There's a dam here. I think I'm not supposed to tell you which one it is, but I mean, if you're from the Northwest and you know of energy, you will have recognized it by now. And it uses the data distribution service. There was a whole re-engineering of the communication system for all the devices, turbines, etc. in the dam, and that was done using OMG's data distribution service. We've, at the bottom left, a gateway between DDS and OPC UA, I already mentioned it. Most of the systems and the software that you use in your enterprises was analyzed and designed using UML. The UML is also the foundation for the definition of the Open Field Message Bus, OpenFMB, which is a framework that is widely used in the power industry. And SysML, of course, is used for the analysis and design and reliability analysis of any large systems, and that probably means that many power plants and other elements of the power network have a SysML model behind the way they were designed. We also have system assurance standards like the system assurance case meta model, which allows you to reason about properties of systems, including reliability, security, etc. And that, of course, given the probability of attacks against the infrastructure, is an important standard to know about. The way we approve these things is we have an open process. So basically, everything we adopt is published and is open, and as I said earlier, can be downloaded for free. But the board of directors of OMG will not approve a standard specification unless there is evidence that at least one member of OMG has implemented the standard. So we do not produce shelfware. we produce standards that where there is evidence that at least that it is possible and it has proven that there was a business case for at least one company to develop software or a system based on that standard. So by the time the standard is adopted, there is at least one reference implementation from someone, and if they found a business case, then it is likely that other people will implement. So Richard Soley, our chairman, is fond of saying, I'm not here to develop standards, I'm here to develop markets. And of course, we do develop standards, but the purpose is to foster the offering of standardized capabilities to the market. Everything is freely available, there's no export restrictions, there's nothing to pay. There are rules about intellectual property, and most of the standards, 90% more of our standards, are published under what we call a non-assert clause, which means that the people who develop the standard retain officially, if you want, the paternity of the standard. It is their intellectual property, except they've signed a waiver that says we will never assert our property right against anyone else's using it. So basically they've said, we're not abandoning the claim that we're the father of this, but you can use it and we'll never contest your right to use it in any court of law. The process to select the standards is open. We've used it more than 200 times. And basically we issue a request for proposal, we get submissions, we have an open process through our task force work to process the submissions, make them better, adopt them. It's a process that takes 1.5 years, 2 years, 2.5 years on average. I mean, it's a range I just gave you, so it's not an average, but it compared to like 7 years at ISO. And we actually eat our own dog food, which means that our RFP process that generates specifications is in fact modeled using our own standard BPMN. So we've got some rigor in how we interact between various bodies, get specifications reviewed by the architecture board, by the board of directors, etc. The resources at your disposal, if you want to explore what we do better, is a number of us have different colored badges. They put mine in the wrong order. I like them to be the Italian or the Mexican flag, and they're not exactly in the right order, but that's okay. So the green badge in particular indicate that people are staff members. That's where you can get all sorts of information about logistics. The white badge is a chair badge, so meaning we chair one of the task forces, etc. There is a paper called The Hitchhiker's Guide to OMG, to the OMG, that is sort of the simplified version of how we do things. There is a more legalistic document, if you want, called Policies and Procedures. There's a catalog of all the specifications, which is available on the omg.org website. And then there's a way to get to the work in progress, to all the open requests for proposals, of which there is a large number. The numbers in the circles at the bottom, whether you can see them or not from the back of the room, add up to the 221 specifications. So it tells you which ones are adopted, which ones are under revision, which ones are under development. And there is a development team, of which some of the people are listed here. Terry McElrath is the VP of Operations, and then the other 3 people basically cover everyone in terms of relationship with potential members. They actually have divided the alphabet between themselves, so if you're letter A to E, you talk to Steve, etc. I won't bore you with that, but there are people at your disposal to help you make sense of all of this.